my assignment was to talk about a very specific aspect of feed enzyme, and that has to do with Xylanase and finished pig viability. In terms of the approach I'm going to take, just several pieces that I'm going to deal with today. Viability is a very powerful driver of profitability, and to have an enzyme that can impact that in a meaningful way is pretty impressive and greatly desired. I'll show you the first demo that we had of Xylanase improving finished viability. It was dose related. There are a number of responses that we were able to secure ourselves or by collaborating with others in the industry who had done like trials. And we'll borrow from the poultry and some of my well-skilled friends in the enzyme industry to suggest what the mechanism of action might be. As far as being a powerful driver, I'm going to use something that we do annually to illustrate how important viability can be. We have a financial performance spreadsheet, and at the beginning of the year, or sometimes intervals of 6 months, we will look at the conditions as we can best predict them, I think they're likely to be, and we will look at how much various criteria would have to change to improve the net revenue on a pig of market size that we're marketing. And these are the projections for the year 2015. Stated up front, you can't hardly beat revenue. Revenue, having greater price for your pigs, is the most single important driver you can lay hands onto. We would have to increase pigs per mated sow per year weaned by 1. That's a production issue. Wean finish mortality and the reduction of off-grade pigs, if we could change that less than 0.8%, that would add $1.50 to each of the remaining pigs. And that is something that we felt is achievable. You have to determine what is required and ask, can we envision anything that can be done? At the time, we'd have to increase live weight quite a bit. Feed conversion is a way that you can improve if you can figure out how to do it. And the value depends on the feed cost. So if the feed cost was an average $20 to $25 per ton for feeder to finish, then we'd have to increase about 5 points. But if the feed cost were higher, as it has been in some years, we would increase, we'd have to decrease feed conversion by about 3 points. And to be honest, the best single way to improve feed conversion by 5 points is to get away from the top disease we face in the industry, and that's young wean age. If wean age is shifted from an average of 18 days to 22 days, you'll pick up 5 points of feed conversion. And so there's a number of places where you'll gain, but it's a slow slug otherwise. And you can see changing feed costs is certainly important. As far as the first demonstration, we found in the year 2008, actually, by just looking at a study that involved Xylanase with the potential for nutrient uplift, we found a tendency for viability or to improve. And we couldn't ignore it because it was quite a striking pattern, but we didn't have enough experimental units to really prove it. We don't like to test less than 500 pigs per treatment when we're doing this sort of thing, and that's really kind of minimum. But this test, or this report, will be on several Xylanases. There are a number of Xylanases in the market, and I understand they're not exactly the same in terms of how they chemically attack. But I was drug into a study by Janet Remus of DuPont, Danisco DuPont. I begged her not to make me do it, but she made me do it. And so I said I would put together the diets that we were using at the time at Illinois, but find someplace else to do the study. And at the end of the day, nothing came out of it except I noted in what was a very high health situation from 25 pounds to 280, there was a improvement in viability of the pigs up to a point. If you dosed them too much, then it was counterproductive, and we often see that even in other areas such as amino acids. So we found that actually confirmed our first study. We did another study about the same time and found a similar effect. So I asked one of my friends who's seated here today, Pete Wilcock, about the quadratic nature of the viability, and he and Mike Bedford had indicated to me that it appears to them that you can get an overproduction of xylose, which is a derivative of the breakdown of the rabinoxylans, but it can be excessive, and if it's excessive for its consumption, then it can if it goes beyond what is required to feed a beneficial bug microbiome, it can be harmful to the gut and to enteric health. And where their studies on this came from, as I understood, was from using it in immediately weaned pigs, and where stool integrity could be adversely impacted by it. So we use this routinely. We have for several years, but we initiate it normally after 25 pounds, and in that first diet, it's about 70% of what we give in the finished dose. A recent study that we did in 2014, again with Janet Remus in this case, was conducted at our research site in Iowa. And the basis is that this enzyme, in our previous studies had indicated that it can improve viability, but Janet had indicated to us, only upon asking her, that in their commercial poultry studies, there were likewise improvements in viability of the poultry. And so I asked her why she didn't tell me that to begin with. She said, well, they don't make as big a deal out of it as you do in the pig industry. And so that was her view. And what we wanted to do is calibrate that dose just a little bit better in a commercial environment, going from 25 to 300 pounds. Just real quickly, there were 6 diets used from the last nursery diet through the finish phase. We manufactured 2 diets having porcine, one not having, the other having 9,000 units per kilogram. We made 2 diets, but we somewhat blended those diets, these extremes, to get the others in between. And pigs were removed to medical pens to be humane about it, to treat them. And when they were in their medical pens, they remained on their respective diets, so we could look at the ability of a pig to recover. And so we did a number of measures, but we never only do whole body daily gain. We look at carcass daily gain and feed conversion. The diets were basically corn-soy diets with a modest amount of DDGs and wheat mints. It happened to be what was frugal at the time. Fat was in it. We wouldn't normally have added fat, but we added some just so we could be like a lot of other people. I simply show you most of the diets, 2 and 4, follow a similar pattern. And all diets had a base level of 500 phytase units per kilogram. And so in this study that involved, what did I say, some 2,100 pigs, there's 64 total pens, and the others were medical pens. So it's a pretty fair study. We don't like to go any smaller than that. The pigs had relatively good health status based on the farm that they were derived from and how Dr. Donovan relates things. But you can see that for those receiving no Xylanase from 25 to 300 pounds, that they were nearly 4% mortality, but there was a linear decline. A quadratic function doesn't begin to fit it, so it's a linear decline all the way to 9,000 units. We didn't go any higher than that because we felt, based on the last study, that it could turn out negative. The full value pigs were simply a function of 100% of the pigs minus death loss. There weren't any cull pigs, but the market being what it was last year, that the cull pig would have to be below 190 pounds to be considered that. And so you can see what happens in terms of full value pigs. Now, looking a little more carefully at some of the data, you can see we have the doses, the number of pins, experimental units, and the number of pigs that were placed in those pins. And if you look at the final weight, you'll see that there's a quadratic effect, as is there for average daily gain. And so it seemed to us that if you're going to add Xylanase, you should either add it or not add it. There was an effect in the middle that was a bit depressing, and I'm not sure the dynamics of that. But so that's an important thing to note. Now, in terms of carcass yield, that's not a significant number, but since we have seen it before, we decided to trust it because there is a gentle dose-related improvement in the yield of carcass. We presume that's because of improved gut health, so that there would need to be less tissue mass dedicated for the immunity of the animal. And so you can see it was gentle, but it was steady. And so using that, then carcass pounds and gain per day was ameliorated a little bit, but whole body feed conversion is kind of tough to prove if you're 100% of the amino acid requirement, which we were. But on a carcass basis, we were able to get some gentle improvement in carcass feed conversion. So we were grateful. Now, if you look at the daily gain, you don't really see things as they are. Yes, the daily gain for the pigs that remained was less for the middle two diets. But when you're saving pigs, the important thing is how many pigs you kept in the gain. So you look at pin gain, pin mass gain. And so here's the whole body weight in pounds per pig weaned. But when we calculated the number of pigs that were saved, you can see we were saving 5 more pigs, 18 more pigs, 16 more pigs. But then you look at, because you're saving pigs, you're probably saving some that, if they dropped out, could make gain a little bit better. You see that the whole body pin gains were improved, and that's an important facet of the gain. Carcass pin gain likewise improved and seemed to top out about 6,000. So we do this in nursery studies and we do this in finished studies because the way you value a pound of gain on a pig that would have stayed and one that would have been lost is very different. The value of the gain is twice. And so if you financially value it based on the improved viability and the pounds retained, improved individual carcass feed conversions at 90 pounds, then $90 per carcass hundredweight. And I actually don't know if I quite had this right. I picked a number that wasn't too revelatory, but $40 or 40 cents per ton for every 3,000 micrograms added. If feed costs were as it is now, then the return over feed would be as indicated here. If the feed were $350 per ton weighted across the phases, this is how it would turn out. The 9,000 didn't give us any better gain or total gain or feed conversion, but the main advantage of it was that we were able to keep the same total pounds marketed as we did for the zero, and so that proved to be the dose optimum for the doses we tested. At the same time, we conducted a study with Hostazyme, and in the other barn, and only were able to deliver 2 treatments in his case. We gave, and this was a parallel study having about 2,600 pigs, same growth period, and had a 1-dose delivery of the Xylanase. And so you saw that there's about a 25% improvement in viability, even though the pigs are living quite well. And the last one, where we went higher in dose, we were able to get up to about 40% improvement. Now you might ask, are there other examples conducted elsewhere where this has been shown? And in fact, there are. I contacted Pete Wilcock, and Mike, he talked to his people at AB Vista, and in their studies, they had conducted some very good field studies, very good side-by-side field studies using good experimental method. And so they hadn't looked specifically for viability, because the game was daily gain and feed conversion, but they did conduct 4 trials, involved over 4,400 pigs, and they varied in weight, but the controls, all 4 responded in terms of viability, with controls averaging 7.2 mortality as compared to 4.8 with the other, and simply show you these in 2 sets. Looking at those under high health conditions, in this case based on simply the level of mortality, that's all I could really base it on. In our studies, we go into a little more depth. But they have good numbers of pigs, where you have over 750 pigs per treatment. And I was presenting this, Pete, at a DuPont conference, so I had to list you as a competitor. A nice one, a really nice one, though, a gentle one. And so you can see in this study, there was a nice improvement in viability as well as in the other. These were conducted in the UK in wheat-based diets, and I'll want to say readily that these diets, this response isn't limited to having some form of wheat in the diet. In the low health or high immune stress, you can see that there's significant death loss, of which there was reasonable to some amelioration of that. And the first study is kind of a modest one, probably too modest. Corn-soy response here in the U.S. The other is UK-based, wheat-based diet. So a possible mechanism has been said by Dr. Uriola and the other speaker. What we were expecting, based on all the work that's been done, is that this enzyme will help break down the arabinoxylans, and in the process, it reveals or provides a substrate for growth of beneficial bacteria like lactobacilli, for example, that becomes really a prebiotic and encourages the growth of that population of beneficial bugs. In the process, would suppress the pathogens, and the data is really quite good in poultry for doing this. Now, this shift in microbiome type is probably very important. We've tended to look at having too much protein-based substrate left over that encourages pathogens, but we were able to find a way, probably through prebiotic nutrition, to benefit ourselves so that the intestinal barrier was more able to reduce, to fend off any challenge, but the challenge might have been less, in fact. So in conclusion, what we'll say, based on our experience, and we've done a number of studies in this area, is the most important and the most repeatable benefit of Xylanase, and we've seen it in all 3 that we've tested, is viability, pig viability, and it doesn't have to be 10% mortality to show that. And the second is that that viability tended to be improved by 30 to 40% under low immune stress conditions. As I've indicated, it's been shown in a variety of diet types, and not limited to wheat-based diets, and for each of the companies that we work with. So nutrient uplift does occur, but it's not as impressive or repeatable, so certainly don't deny it, but it's not as fun.